Naturally, we had to kick off talking about the cars in GT7 1.62 with the Renault Avantime. It's the most obvious one to start out with, and for the most part it seems, at least here on this channel, to be the car that most people were looking forward to, or at the very least curious about. If maybe you didn't play before GT Sport, it would be of course totally new to you. It was in the series before for a few games, but never a premium, and it was an interesting car, but much like most of the minivans in the game, it didn't really feel like you had to buy one. As with many cars like that, it had its fans, and for good reason. It's a very unique approach. It's part minivan, part hot hatch, part coupe, somehow all of those and none of them at the same time. And of course the real important thing is that it's a Renault, because although that doesn't sound like it would be a big deal, for those who know Renault, they know that when they do performance, they do it really well, and in particular front-wheel drive performance. They are superb at doing that. The Megane, the Clio, across the board, every generation, they're such strong cars, essentially France's answer to the Type Rs from Honda, and they are superb, simply put. This one, despite being bigger, significantly heavier than something like a Megane or a Clio, it handles itself so well. And we're going to compare a green version here in the video, which is completely standard, and the fully built version, which of course those of you who watched my 1.62 review on Thursday when it came out, you'll have seen that car as well. That one is fully built, so motor swapped, stripped out, 1100 kilos, 800 horses, over 700 points, racing hard tyres, just the whole deal. And of course to gauge that massive gulf between the standard form and the fully built form. Now in standard form it's fairly modest on points, which of course makes sense given its size and weight, because on the one hand it is a 204 horsepower V6, but it weighs 1741 kilos, which is what, like 3900 pounds, probably somewhere thereabouts. And in terms of horsepower it's good, but with that kind of size, that kind of weight, and again a front wheel drive chassis, so no launch advantage or grip advantage of all-wheel drive like the Alphard would have, it could potentially be useless. And especially when they give it a price tag of 50 grand, which is not realistic at all compared to real life, so again with the prices they don't really make sense in this game. But of course in GT7 terms 50 grand isn't really that much, and you can spend a whole lot more than that fully building the car. I don't recall what the price of the motor swap is with that GTI Vision GT engine. I think it was what, probably 320, 350,000, something like that, so considerably more expensive if you do everything to it, probably more like a 500 or 600 grand car in that fully tuned form, because it's barely over 700 points with a huge amount of power and a fairly reasonable amount of weight actually. In fact, if I recall correctly, this car in its fully built form might actually be lighter than the Espace F1 was. I want to say that was like 1300 kilos, I think, something like that in GT2. This is more like 1100, which is quite the advantage when it's running essentially the same kind of power. Now, of course, it is no Espace F1. It's not even close. That's my favourite car of the entire Gran Turismo series, and to be honest, I highly doubt we'll ever see it back. If anything, we'll probably see it in Forza before Gran Turismo, but this does at least engender some fond memories of the car. And also, because it's kind of unfair to compare it to that really, it's a nice shot of nostalgia for those who did already love it in the past, in a similar way to how, you know, if the Honda Odyssey came back, for example, you know that would have its fans as well. And the Honda Odyssey, much like the Alphard, does have a four-wheel drive advantage. The single most impressive thing about this car, I think for people who've never driven it before and never played the older GT games, will be just how good that front wheel drive chassis is. You will be shocked by just how good this car can be. Of course, when everything is racing spec, you would hope at the very least that it would be quick, if not a lot of fun, and it is. In standard form though, that is where you can really tell the canvas that you're working with, because if it's good then that's a very strong gauge of how good it can be. Even in that standard form, you can definitely taste and smell the seeds of how good the car can be, and it lives up to them, because on the one hand it's not a hugely powerful car for its weight, especially by today's standards, and having a front wheel drive chassis is very, very strange, but somehow, and I guess a lot of it is because it's French, they kind of managed to pull it off. In fact, they do manage to pull it off. It's almost more of a Citroen kind of thing, I would say, to have such a weird car with such a radically different approach. But yeah, this car I think will go down as one of Renault's probably most iconic modern cult classics. Something like a Velsatis, for example, doesn't quite reach the same level, and unfortunately, as good as it looks, the Renault Laguna Coupe, which I personally think is a great looking car, that doesn't seem to have anywhere near as many fans either. Another one which you barely ever see here in the UK is the Renault Wind, which is kind of a cool little sports car, but you never see it. Ultimately though, that's it for my thoughts on the Avantime. Definitely worth a shot, and even if you don't buy any of the other cars, well, one of them's free and the others are Vision GTs in one form or another, so you probably won't for many players. I would say that this one is worth checking out. Is it worth logging back into the game if you've been away for months? Well, I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but if you need a front wheel drive car and you're sick of using the same old Type Rs or whatever else, it's definitely an interesting alternative. Of course, I'll see you tomorrow with most likely the racing version of the Corvette, so I'll see you then, and for now, thanks for watching.